good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, wherever you are in the world. And welcome to another podcast Zoom episode of Here's Tom with the Weather. And just to reiterate that we always say before the meeting, this is not an AA meeting. So it's not an AA meeting. It's not an all share. It's basically to do with the 12 steps. It's about the 12 steps of recovery. And we really we try to go in depth into step 11 or step 3, but in step 11 and really trying to look at various people's concepts of their own higher power and ask them questions and find out what makes them tick and how they actually came to that, how they discovered their higher power. And I'm really excited to introduce you to our guest this week is Ben Dean. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of a bio before we start chatting with him. But so Ben Dean. Ben has been applying the occult, magical practices and the satanic philosophy to his life for over a decade. Ben came into the rooms of AA at the age of 24. He's now 13 years sober. And he had an issue. When he came in, he had an issue with the Christian element. In his words, he saw Christianity as a matter of merely exchanging your masters instead of no longer being a slave. And being drawn into the polytheistic idea of the Norse gods, and then exploring different magical paths such as Chaos Magick, sorcery, ceremonial magic, divination, and alchemical practices, all with a good helping of psychology, rational thought, and philosophy, all of which he uses within his recovery program. He, of course, settles for a slightly more provocative title of Satanist, which he feels covers everything. But we're going to go into that, into the meaning of that and the true meaning of that. He actively seeks to dispel the myths and stereotypes that surround it by working with things such as the human library, which he's just told us is a very fascinating project. He's appeared on the BBC TV's Sunday Morning Live, as well as speaking with other large corporations such as Google, eBay, Heineken, and Tesco as part of their diversity training. He's a published author and the founder of an addiction recovery website and a group of secular AA and NA meetings run by, in his words, a team of rebels in recovery, where any demon, god, goddess, and deity of any kind are welcome. Ben is also chairman of the UK-based Church of Rational Satanism and a treasurer of occult and magic group Star Club, which takes magical practitioners on a journey to explore different realms of magic and allows each individual to incorporate them into their own working practices. And gee whiz, that's a bit of a CV, and I think we've only touched the surface. Hello, Ben. How are you, mate?
I'm great, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, really good. And thanks very much for coming along to see us here. And thanks to everyone for joining us live and here at the podcast. So as we do with this meeting, we have a bit of a tradition, and we always start off with a bit of a trick question. And I'm going to ask you this, Ben. So you've been afforded the opportunity to have dinner and sit at the table with any history, any sort of spiritual figure from throughout time, either current or somebody who's passed on. Who would that person be? Who would you like to have dinner with? And why, and what would you have for pudding?
That was actually a really difficult question. It took me a while to really figure out who I wanted to sit down and eat with. I kind of narrowed it down to a few figures. Jimmy Page came in there, Austin Osman Spare came up, John Dee came up, but I actually plumped for Friedrich Nietzsche in the end, just because I align so well with his way of thinking, and it would be a really interesting discussion, I think.
Fantastic. Okay. And what about pudding? Anything in particular that you'd like?
I'd probably go for an apple strudel, bringing his sort of German side and the forbidden fruit at the same time. Fantastic.
Okay. So I think I know there's somebody in this room. I'm sure Professor Paul, who's in here, would probably love to pick your brains about Nietzsche. I know that he's a big fan of Nietzsche. So, yep. Mate, let's get the elephant in the room out of the way.
Yeah.
Right. Satanism. Now, I can tell you that when I posted the information about this meeting originally, it caused what you could say a kerfuffle in the polite English way of things, and it automatically
storm in a teacup.
It was literally, it caused a furore, and the fact that we were putting on Satanism, and I think let's clear that up in terms of what your understanding of Satanism. Satanism, as far as I'm concerned, is not devil worship. it's not the sort of traditional horns and tail and the pitchfork and the evil side of things, is it? Let's clarify that, will you?
No, generally, if I do a really short version, if you think of belief in God as belief in something else, the opposite inversion of that is belief in the self. So as a Satanist, I believe in me. I can see me, feel me, touch me, I exist. The other one is debatable. Within that, there's 4 camps you can fit into. You have the theistic Satanists or devil worshippers that effectively have inverted the idea of Christianity or the Bible, and they think that whatever Christianity says is bad is actually good, and whatever Christianity says is bad is actually, or is good is bad. I'm not one of those. They're relatively silly, or generally they're quite immature in the way they think. Unless they're the people that need to have an external deity in order to have a more personal connection with it, then I can kind of understand that. Then you have the atheistic Satanists that don't believe in a sky fairy or a ground troll. They see Satan as a literary character, and they use it as an archetypal figure, something to aspire to be like. I can get on board with that, but I'm not one of those. Then you have the agnostic Satanists. So they're more the spiritual Satanists. They see Satan as a force, something to give them a bit of a push, something to pull them along, give them a driving direction in their life. Again, I can get on board with a little bit of that, but I'm not one of those. I fit in the 4th camp. I'm a neurognostic or I-theist, as in I am God because I am master of my own reality, or I am master of my own recovery in this case. So for me, Satanism is an individualistic, life-loving philosophy about rewarding the here and now rather than in an imaginary afterlife, in a nutshell.
Wow, and just add hot water, mate. That's pretty much amazing. Now we've spoken a bit over the past week, and I've really got to know you, and and I know that you have a family and you have children, and you're a loving father as well, and I think that came through to me, and just in terms of how you've gone about your life. But you've certainly, I guess, in my opinion, you found a higher power, which, as I guess, with regards to the 12th step, it isn't you. You aren't. The self-will run riot has dissipated, and you've had a new director, I guess, if for want of a better word. Would that be right?
Yeah, obviously it comes back to me. I generally, Satan is a metaphor for who I am and who I am sort of internally. So for me, the divine spark lives within me. If you look at it from a Christian perspective, if we're all made in the image of God, that's because we all reflect our internal selves externally by how we dress, how we act, and how we interact with other people. So yeah, the divinity is within me.
Right. I get that. So it's kind of a non-duality. You've got a bit of a non-duality perspective going on there, I would guess, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Mate, so just go back to your story. Now, it was interesting when I was reading your bio, and you said it was, for you, Christianity, traditional Christianity was, you were merely exchanging your masters as opposed to not being a slave. And I like that. And I like
especially when coming into recovery, because I saw lots of people put down a drink or a substance and picked up a deity, and I was like, well, hang on a minute, or they picked up a Christian god, and I was like, you just swapped your slavery for addiction for a slavery to something else that wasn't essentially you, and that really perplexed me, and I couldn't quite fathom that.
So go back a bit. So just tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of how you got sober. I don't want to sort of make it a big long share, but because it's fascinating. I'm fascinated to know that history of how you got sober, and then when you discovered that, and where you found that concept of your particular higher power.
Sure. So I came into rooms age 24. I'd battled for a number of years before actually coming into the rooms to try and get over my drinking. I'm not going to do like a best worst drinking story ever. I had an issue. I needed to do something about it. So I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I really did struggle with that Christian concept. In actual fact, the Christian concept kept me away from the rooms longer than it probably should have done. So when I came in, I looked for a higher power. And initially it was the polytheistic idea of the Norse gods, sort of Thor, Odin, Balder, and sort of all things like that. I met someone in the fellowship that was from the Odinist fellowship, and I felt that they'd bastardized the religion and made it into more of a neo-Nazi type thing, and that wasn't me. I look a bit like white Jesus, you know. I look like the stereotypical sort of blonde Viking with sort of the gingery Celtic fleck, and I decided then I needed to for my own self look for something slightly different, because it felt like it didn't fit. So I bought the Satanic Bible at the age of 19, read it drunk with some friends. They all said, you know, what a load of rubbish. And I said, that's the way I think. So I kind of went back into that. And actually, it was sitting in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous where I was struggling with that concept of a higher power, and the suggestion comes up, well, use the rooms as your higher power. So I thought, well, hang on a minute. The Norse gods actually manifest in human form in some of the sagas. So maybe everyone in the room is a manifestation of a Norse god, and they're trying to give me a message.
Mm-hmm.
So then I kind of worked back a little bit further and went down the whole Jungian perspective, like Carl Jung. And actually the Norse gods are part of my own psyche, you know, like the archetypal figures. So in that case, everyone in the rooms are part of my psyche, trying to give something back to me, you know, reflecting part of me back to me.
Yeah.
So if they're part of my psyche, then I am the God or the Satan character sitting on my throne, and they're all my angels and demons. And if I get to know them and understand them, then I can work them in my favor. So if I get angry, then I can say, anger demon, you know, you need a timeout, go and sit in the corner for 5 minutes. We need this other demon to come forward, or this other angel to come forward, because we need that aspect of our personality to help us achieve what we want to achieve. And that's kind of where that concept was born from.
That's fascinating, and you know, it's so bizarre because last week we had a guy called Jeremy, who's the priest whose relationship, as you know, and he basically said the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's quite, and particularly about, you know, living in the now and time and space, being outside of time and space, and a lot of the messages that come back are reflected back to us. And it's funny how Zoom has really accentuated that. You know, for all the faces that come on these little boxes now. And often they are like facets of our personality, but that's my opinion. So I'm going to put you over to one of the panelists here. We've got a couple of people in the room that are the regular panelists. I'm going to go to Professor Paul first. And I know he's a big Nietzsche fan, and I know he's particularly interested. So Paul, have you got a question you'd like to put to Ben, or something you'd like to say?
Well, Ben, I think it's interesting that you wanted to have dinner with Nietzsche. He's one of the people I'd choose too. And I think you were a massive influence on Crowley, of course. You know, I mean, it's almost like, you know, the things like the Book of the Law, which you'll be familiar with. It's almost like a summary of Nietzsche's philosophy in many ways, I think, you know. I suppose one of the things I struggle with I don't struggle with anything, to be honest. I don't struggle with Satanism in any way, really. I'm kind of as ambivalent about that as I am about all things in many ways, you know. However, it's almost like Nietzsche destroys all iconography, really, all spiritual iconography, you know. And I actually feel that, you know, Crowley in particular, although it develops a new iconography, a new old iconography, if you like, by, you know, with his reflection on Egyptian gods like Hadit, Nuit, Ra, Kuit as almost a new holy trinity, you know.
Yeah.
And my problem with using Satanism for my magic, and you'll notice I have the Star of Babylon around my neck, so you know, maybe more of a shackle than a celebration. I don't know.
I've just had it tattooed on my right foot, so.
Oh, cool! I like your tattoos of the Sephira on your arms, and especially that Darth is starred there almost. You know.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Point I wanted to make was, for me, Satanism was always just a pure reversal of Christianity. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like Satan being a biblical entity. You know, maybe older, maybe older than the Bible, but you know, we've only got you know, I mean, but the Bible's a fairly old book. But it's almost like, for me, magic ultimately is about destroying all of those dichotomies. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of you know, so to kind of, and I agree with you, and I appreciate what you're describing there as it's kind of a worship of the self.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of, for me, the self is almost the thing that I am dissolving, you know, in ritual.
In the alchemical sense, yeah.
Utterly dissolving.
But I think that's where the whole concept, I think the Nietzschean concept of the Übermensch comes in. The Übermensch is the best version of ourself that we aspire to be like. So for me, the Satan character is this Übermensch. It is the best version of myself that I want to aspire to be like. And for me, the concept of Satan, if you look at it from the actual root of it, the ha Satan, which isn't a noun, just means opponent, adversary, or accuser. So it just means I'm on the opposite team to those that are on the Abrahamic faith, not because I'm against them, just because of the way that I think and believe and do things. You know, that belief in mathematics and, you know, science and, you know, things that magic that would have been classed as heresy, you know, I would have been burnt at the stake. You know, there's a good meme that goes around: if you weren't someone the church would have burnt at the stake, then are you even living? You know, that's kind of where I come from. But for me, the idea then of Satan doesn't actually just stick within the confines of Christianity. And for me, I bring in things like Baphomet, Saturn, as in the god, which is number 3 on the Sephiroth, which is actually Babylon as well. And Baphomet fits into that number 3. Baphomet's also a massive tattoo I have on my back. But you bring in Mars as well within that. You bring in the Norse goddess Hel, ruler of the underworld. You bring in Hades in there. You bring in like Kali as well. So Satan for me is all those gods and goddesses that were demonized by Christianity. And I bring all those in and work those into that concept of, you know, something to aspire to be like.
Thank you. That's great. Thanks, Paul, for that. Thanks for coming in. And just to clarify that, anyone who doesn't know, Paul was talking about Aleister Crowley. If you've not heard of Aleister Crowley, then he's worth having a look at. We won't go into it too much now. And Nietzsche is probably worth having a look at. It's a bit of an intellectual heavyweight, but it's certainly worth it. And we will probably be doing something on that at a later date. But those, just so you know, it's worth looking at Crowley just for the crazy life that he led as a spiritual adventurist at the very least. And
the unholy Crowley, yes.
Yeah, he was let's just say he was a character, to put it mildly. Ben, now one of the big things that I got this week learning and just talking to you is that you believe in, you know, what you're talking. You mentioned Abrahamic stuff, but a lot of the stuff you talk about predates Abrahamic religion, doesn't it, or Abrahamic spirituality? We're talking way back Stonehenge, kind of pre Neolithic, aren't we?
Bring it all in. Like, yeah. I don't want to limit myself to one thing, like one text, one idea. Bring it all in. If it works, work it.
Okay. So are there any practices that you do that are of ancient, like you said, I think we spoke about rituals earlier. Are there any rituals that you do that predate, you know, go back into Neolithic times, that go back into those times of, you know, Stonehenge and stuff? Is there stuff that happens way back when?
Quite possibly, yeah. I mean, for me, magic is mentalism anyway. In terms of my daily practice, I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I do 10 minutes of yoga, which gets me in contact with my body. I then do magical practice, which consists of a lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, hexagram ritual, Kabbalistic cross. I do a prayer to invoke the God within myself. I do a prayer to or success prayer, which brings in Lucifer, Beelzebub, and Astaroth, all of which are tattooed on me as well. Then I do a prayer or the Orphic hymn to Saturn within that as well. I do an invocation ritual with the pentagram, and then I do 3 minutes of meditation. Later on the afternoon, I do a Qigong, which is actually using the chi, creating chi energy. Yeah. I do the several prayers during the day, generally the same success prayer, and I do 5-minute meditation at lunch time, and then the evening I do the same thing in the morning without the yoga and then a 10-minute meditation. And for me, that brings me in contact with the mind, body and spirit, all through the yoga, the meditation and the magic.
So I think that a lot of the times I've heard, particularly over the last sort of through this Zoom COVID era that we're living in, and the kind of the revolution that AA or NA and all the recovery programs have gone through for those that have adopted the digital sort of age, that it's come to me that a lot of people talk about going from their head to their heart, and they have some kind of spiritual awakening. And oftentimes, we read about stuff and we can read about it. It can be two-dimensional, and then all of a sudden the penny drops and something happens. Can you describe the moment when you had your, I guess, epiphany or an awakening or some sort of enlightenment? Can you tell us what happened?
It was probably sitting in that room. It was probably what I described earlier, that sitting in the room or the rooms of AA, and actually kind of figuring out that, hang on a minute, all of these people could be actually giving me a message, and I need to understand. I need to become the master of self, and fully understand who I am and why I tick. And it's that sort of underlying, for me, satanic philosophy of always questioning why do we do this, why do we do that, why do we follow this thing, to understand fully why I do it. And it's actually one of the things that is mentioned in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It says on page 46, 47, actually talks about, you should ask yourself what these spiritual terms mean rather than just following and repeating.
Just accepting on face value everything that comes through.
Yeah.
Great. And I guess, and for you, if you want to ask Ray, I'm going to go to a couple of the other panelists. I've got James Lebowski and Anne there as well, if you want to come in. But I was going to say, you've had a deepening, and I know you mentioned things about, that you have well, you've seen angels, you believe in angels, you believe in deities. Can you give us some of your supernatural, can you give us a couple of stories or instances of some kind of supernatural instances where that higher power has manifested itself and become solid? Sure. You've had visions?
Yeah, definitely had visions through meditations recently. When I dropped in the success prayer, that was really quite interesting. Had some interesting visions there. So Lucifer came forward in that one in terms of symbols that appeared, animals that appeared. I was physically touched on the hand, which is actually the same hand and arm that I have the Lucifer tattoo on. The most amazing one, though, was the Path of the Rose weekend path walking that I did as a group, and that was actually phenomenal. You got to go in there and you got to meet the archangels. I got to go into a room with Samael. Obviously, it's all mentalism. It all happens in your head. I'm imagining all of this happening. But wow, what a weekend that was. Oddly enough, in the middle, we did it in Bath, and I actually got the train all the way back to London to do the BBC thing in the morning, and then got the train back to Bath to finish off the Path of the Rose thing. And then we invoked a demon at the end of it. And that was just crazy. That was an amazing weekend. I really enjoyed
like a party.
That. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic, mate. And just before I go to Anne, I guess the fundamental part of AA or Alcoholics Anonymous or any of these recovery programs is that we help others. We help suffering alcoholics.
Yeah.
Is that still front and center of what you do?
Yes, because I think helping others helps me. I'm selfish in that regard, that I do stuff that benefits me a lot of the time because I'm that atheist. So helping other people helps me. I mean, I actually wrote the book on the 12 steps, so I didn't change any of the words in the 12 steps because I found so many groups did that. There's thelemic steps, there's pagan steps, and I was like, no, you can actually do this by changing your perspective of what the steps say. So you can then go into any meeting with a satanic perspective and look at the 12 steps and not have to have a different group of of 12 steps in your hand and go, oh, when they say that step, they mean that. No, they're the steps, use them, but change the way you understand them and you view them. And I think that for me was the most important thing. And that was one of the ways I could give back to lots of people without having to, and giving them the esoteric knowledge, you know, the deep knowledge that you need to sort of look at it from that different perspective without having to sit everyone down and go, you know, no, you have to do this and you have to do that. Because I, you know, as a Satanist in recovery as well, you get it from all sides. You get it from people that say the 12 steps don't work because you need God. You get it from people that say the 12 steps don't work because you need God.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, that's just amazing. So, Anne, would you like to come in? Anne,
yeah, thanks, David. And that was a perfect lead into, you know, I wanted to start out by saying, you know, I was able to visit a meeting that Ben chaired a couple of weeks ago. And, you know, it was just AA, you know, it was just AA. And it was really a wonderfully eye-opening experience. And thank you for being here today, Ben.
No worries.
So
great to be here.
What I was thinking as you were talking, you know, you talk about, you know, your daily ritual. You talk about, you know, you brought in some things from the big book. You know, you have maintained the 12 steps. What other pieces of the big book do you bring into Uncover Satan, Recover Thyself, which I haven't read, and how does that flow in your meetings?
I hopefully it flows all the way through the meetings, but it is just 12 steps, and it is just viewing it from a satanic perspective. So all the 12 steps are still there. I, you know, go through stage by stage how I did the steps with my sponsor, who actually was a pagan chaos magician. I was very lucky to find, you know, one of the other weirdos out there that had already gone through the steps. He's got years on me, so that's fantastic. So yeah, it is incorporating the 12 steps completely and fully, but it is doing it in a way that I found more palatable for me, because and I found there's lots of people that have the same thing as well, that Christian concept really does great. And it was being able to remove that from the 12 steps, because you don't necessarily need that Christian element in there if you're applying the steps properly and if you're working the program properly. So yeah, it's about doing that, and it's about the program and the individual then.
Cheers, Anne. Just also, we several of us went along to your meeting, which, as I say, was an AA meeting. It was an AA meeting. There was nothing different, and I love your take on it as well. Could you tell us your version of the Serenity Prayer, because I found that really fascinating and really lovely, actually.
Yeah, the satanic recovery serenity invocation. So I invoke thee to witness as I develop the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Hail thyself.
Great. Fantastic. Now let's go to the Lebowski. I believe you've got a comment, James.
Yeah, I haven't really formulated much of a question. I also was really surprised. You know, I found the title of your meeting real provocative, so I went and checked it out, and was really surprised by the fact that I just felt so at home in that. It was just a really great AA meeting, and what I really you know, I was listening to a lady at one of the meetings earlier talk about how the Zoom phenomena has created a lot of exotic AA, and there was a little bit of concern in her voice about the fact that could affect it in a negative way and all this kind of stuff. But I really like the fact that you chose, when it comes to AA, to not rewrite the book according to yourself, but to just do that, and to just do, you know, but the thing that's been that kind of blew my mind ever since I was at your meeting, and I don't know how to turn it into a question, but it was the the return of the idea of archetypes.
Yep.
Which is something that I really hadn't thought. When I first got sober, you know, I'm one of those people, I was a lapsed Catholic. I decided I had to figure out some other kind of God than the one that was, you know, than the corpse that was stretched across the crucifix that I was, you know, drug in front of as a young child. And the a lot of the Hindu stuff talked about archetypes, and a lot of the other stuff I kind of played around with in terms of mysticism with the Archangel Michael cards and those kinds of things all talk about archetypes. And I didn't find anything at all that wasn't, that conflicted with the AA as the 12 steps being sort of a enlightenment path, if you will. And so I just want to say that I really appreciate the fact that you enlightened me as far as what the whole Satanism, what the concept means, because mine came from Hammer horror films, you know, not from any kind of real place of earth-centered, humanistic, non-dual participation in the entire explosion of experience that's going on, you know, of which this is a part. So
it's amazing that you can do that though, and the idea of Satanism can bring in, you know, that concept of the archetype as well. I mean, when you look at how LaVey and how he constructed the Satanic Bible, he basically brought in Ayn Rand's objectivism, Ragnar Redbeard's Might is Right, Nietzschean philosophy, and propped it all up with Aleister Crowley's Enochian magic, sort of smashed it together and went, that's what Satanism is. So with the Church of Rational Satanism, we took the spine of that, as in, you know, there's philosophical things within that, but make a multi-layered system of faiths and ideas that work for you. So I bring in, you know, Hermeticism. I do draw a rune every day. I use tarot cards every day. At the beginning of my recovery, I used to do a fairy oracle every night, and I used to see what the fairies were going to tell me before I went to bed, you know. And it's about chopping and changing then and using what works for you. And I think that's the most important thing. If it's working for you, do it.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
That's wonderful. So it would be true to say that you are living in the realm of the spirit, the sunlight of the spirit, whatever you want to say it. It's a 24/7 gig for you, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Right. So I'm going to invite people now to start putting your hands up if you've got a question for Ben, and we've already got one of our regulars here, Alan from the Middlesbrough. Alan, mate, it's good to see you, Alan. Do you want to come in, mate?
Can everyone hear me?
Aye.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I noticed the tattoo on your hand there, the Sephiroth, the Tree of Knowledge.
Yeah, Tree of Life, yeah.
I've studied metaphysics, and on the course of metaphysics, I done the Kabbalion, and like the principles of polarity, the principles of rhythm, and like the mentalism above, so below, and things like that.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned like Aleister Crowley and things like that, like the Golden Dawn and things. And the other thing is, like you were on about, like the mentalism. Now on my course, when I was doing the Kabbalion with all them principles, I had we studied what was it? I know in the Tree of Knowledge that you said Chibura and all things like that, all the different names and that. And we were relating those, we were looking at that and studying that. But on one particular part of the course, we done yoga and the Muldahara, which is in the, you know, the lower part of the region, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
And I had to visualize the color red. And I visualized the color red, and I had to eat meat. And on the bus, and I'm not joking, and it must be the mentalism part, either that or I'm mental. But when I seen the traffic light, I thought, bloody hell, me energy went up, if you know what I mean, from the cycles 10 to 20, if you understand, you know, with the principles of vibration in the Hermetic system and that, Hermes Trismegistus and things like that. And, you know, like what I'm talking about. And I'm not kidding you, I was sensing danger all around. I thought, am I going nuts? You know what? You showed me the weak knee. and see the colour red. I thought, I'm going bloody Barry on the bus here, because all I could visualise was blood. And I thought, I'm a sober guy. I know I've had the DTs, and I've seen a demon in real life. And I'm not joking. When I seen the egg thing with the one eye with the rhinoceros tusk, believe you me, I nearly bloody died with the DTs. And I'm not joking. He'd had like one eye with a tusk on the end. It glowed green, it glowed black, with silver all around. And that for me is a bloody demon.
Wow.
I'm not joking. When I done this with the hermetics, and I had to visualize red all the time. I had to stop all the green, you know, like green first aid colours and things like that. Blue with the sky. I had to just visualize red. I thought, I'm going nuts here. I need to see it. And that's what part of the course. And then we went on to different colours and that. Whereas that part of the mentalism, like the hermetics, if you know what I mean, the forbidden knowledge, the occult knowledge, you know, like Madame Blavatsky and things like that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but you're tapping into different parts of your own psychology there and your own psyche, and that's how you're working. So the magic and stuff like that works on the subconscious level. So what you're doing in terms of symbols is you're bypassing the conscious brain and dropping right into the subconscious brain. So with sigil magic and stuff you do with chaos magic, is you're dropping information past your conscious brain, dropping it into your subconscious brain. So as an example, they talk about if you go out and you try and look for love, you never find it. But when you stop looking, it randomly appears. That's essentially what you're doing when you're dropping things into your subconscious brain.
Wow. And I just want to congratulate Alan for that's probably the best crazy question we've had on this for a long time, mate. I'm going to send you a free set of steak knives in tomorrow morning's post, mate. You're a champion. That was wonderful.
Yes.
That was wonderful. My God. They breed them good up in Middlesbrough, don't they? In the Borough, mate. Too many Parmos, mate. Too many Parmos. Hey, Ben, just before we go to our next question, we've got Marshwich Meg. I just wanted to just go back a bit and talk about the reaction that we've had on the Facebook post when I posted this. It did create a furor, and I'm not sort of one. I don't want to be provocative or anything, but it did. I think there was something like 140 comments, and it was posted on Tuesday, and there was a reaction from all. There were people who were supporting, and there were people who just were irate. And it's not AA, and it's it's not right, and it's evil, and all this sort of stuff. Can you just where does that come from? And can you give me an example? What sort of attacks have you endured because of your faith?
That I'm not an alcoholic, that I'm not doing my recovery properly. I'm that boy whistling in the dark because I don't get it, and my recovery is all false because I wasn't a proper true alcoholic in the first place, because you can only do it if you've got a Christian God, and that's probably why it drove me even further to look for that sort of provocative satanic name, to be that big middle finger and go, watch me do it. So now when I see those comments that you can't do it like that, it actually drives me on and it makes me laugh, and I think it's fantastic, that my recovery can upset someone so much that they can come up with all these random things as why I'm not a proper alcoholic, or why my recovery isn't right. I've got an 1.5 inch thick folder that I've gone through with 3 different sponsors that has all the evidence in there that proves to me that I'm an alcoholic and that my recovery is working.
That's and where do you think that what does that proper alcoholic mean? When people say that, what does that, I don't understand what that means.
Yeah, it bugs me as well. I mean, for me, I had an issue with drink. I know I had an issue with drink, and the consequences of me drinking, led me to need to come into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's good enough for me, I performed my experiments when I was out there drinking, and I don't need to perform any more experiments.
Yeah, that's great, mate, and bless you for coming on here, and because I know we've both been talking through the week with regards to those reactions, and you know it is great, and I do enjoy your sobriety, and thank you very much. So we're going to go to the question. We've got quite a few hands up here, and I just want to say to you that we're not vetting you, so please be respectful. If you do disagree with Ben, then please remember that he's a human being, and we're all grown-ups here. So that's what I'd ask you, is just be respectful. Don't be insulting, because if you are, you're going to get turfed out. But please ask away. And first, Richard, I think she might have something good for you here, mate. It's Marshwitch Meg. Hey, Marshwitch, or Meg.
Hi there. That was awesome. I found this on Pagans in Recovery. Since Zoom, I started going to Pagans in Recovery. Before that, I was going to secular AA, and I love the beyond belief stuff. And I consider myself beyond belief. I was an atheist and it was boring, and I became a pagan and a witch. So I'm beyond belief, and I'm a bit of an atheo-pagan because I have those atheist roots. And I love Chaos Magick. So I'm just awesome. Would be thrilled to learn about other meetings similar, you know, Ben. And
Yeah.
I wanted to ask a specific question. I always want to ask other chaos witches. How do you achieve gnosis, since we're not allowed to do magic mushrooms or anything anymore? What is your favorite way of achieving an altered state to power your magic or ritual?
And just to say on that is that we do not condone anything like that. So just beware. When we talk about altered states, we're talking about natural stuff, and in no way we would condone.
That's what I mean. I mean without drugs or alcohol.
I'm just being sure that everyone hears that correctly.
Yes.
Okay.
Like meditation or something, you know.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Yeah,
not
but that's a
drugs
good question.
or alcohol.
I just want to be clear about that in this meeting, definitely. Thank you.
So in regards to the meetings, if you check out the Satanic Recovery Facebook page, we have meetings Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Wednesday. I think there's one coming in Thursday. The Monday one, we actually do a reading from Beyond Belief, and that's great. In terms of getting into an altered state, you can do that through meditation. Is great, but actually breathing. Focus on your breathing. In my meditations, I actually do the box breathing, the fourfold breath breathing. So you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4, and go through. But actually, if you do the fast, slow breathing, almost like you're blowing up a balloon, you can get to some really funky altered states through that. So yeah, breathing is an amazing way to get to an altered state.
Thank you very much, Meg. It's really good to see you here. We're, just to reiterate, we're going to put all of Ben's details, all his meeting details will be going in chat, and he will be hanging around after the podcast is over if you want to have pick his brains about stuff, because I know he's got lots of good stuff to talk about, believe me. So all the details for his meetings will be in there, his Facebook page, and all the Zoom and ID numbers will be there. So let's go to, I'll lower your hand, Amy in Kentucky. How are you doing? It's my mate, another one. How you doing?
Hi, it's actually Amy in Kansas City. Thanks for
hi.
calling.
Sorry. Hi, Amy. Yeah.
No, that's okay. Hey, I am so blessed to hear the speaker today, and I'm really lucky that I've been invited to a number of different types of AA meetings. I've been to pagan meetings, and I've actually been to a pagan AA workshop that was held in the woods around a fire, and it was such a powerful experience. And I incorporate a lot of yoga and more Eastern traditions in my practice. And in case you didn't know, there are also yoga AA meetings where you do a whole yoga ritual and then have a meeting, which is not different than what you're talking about. One of the main differences when I tell somebody I'm going to a yoga AA meeting, people don't make that face that when you say you're going to a Satanist meeting. But it's really not that different, right? So one of the things that I found in my practice, and I do the same, like I pull from this and pull from that, and within my yoga practice, there's all these really cool deities and stories that go with the 12 steps and the 12 traditions, and I've incorporated a lot of my own prayers based on those. And what I want to know is a little bit more about what you pull from for the 3rd step prayer and the 7th step prayer.
Oh, That's
Wow.
yeah. I've probably not even thought about the third step and the 7-step prayer, to be honest with you. And in terms of the yoga, though, it is just for me about connecting with my body to understand where that's going. I mean, one of the things that really sparked that off was actually Aleister Crowley. And his 8 rituals, or his 8 lectures on yoga, and it was getting into that sort of the Raja yoga and the Vipassana meditation to actually bring that into my magical practice, as well as incorporating the 12 steps within that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Amy. It's good to see you. Good to see you back at this meeting. I haven't seen you in a couple of months, so thank you very much. Now, I'm just going to go back to my learned friend, Professor Paul, because I think he's got another question for you, Ben.
Thank you, Dave. I'm not entirely sure that I have a question particularly. It's just, I mean, yeah, what I like about what you said, Ben, is that you've, I mean, would you describe yourself as a chaos magician, essentially? Or, I
mean, in some parts, yeah. I'm also a ceremonial magician as well, so I bring in sort of Golden Dawn, Thelemic practices at the same time. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
I just interrupt you. Could you just explain to us what a chaos magician is? But just remember that we're talking to lay people here. So, can you give us an idea what that is?
Basically, a chaos magician uses the tools they have around them, and it's about using belief as a tool.
Okay, Paul. Sorry, mate.
Yeah. No, it's fine. Would you? There are questions here, I guess. Yeah. My spiritual practice, right? I'm only going to dare to call it a spiritual practice, okay? Because I am a member of AA, and you know that's what I do on a daily basis. My spiritual practice, its aim is never to. It's never got a direction in the sense that you know, I don't want anything. Do you know what I mean? What the point is, Ben? Most of the people I've met who call themselves Satanists, and many people who call themselves magicians, you know, and many people who call themselves Thelemites and so on and so forth. It often seems to be about you know, directing one's will, if you like, to achieve certain things. Do you know what I mean? Even some yoga practice seems to have that element to it, you know. And my position on magic is kind of the antithesis of that, really. You know, it's kind of, you know, I mean, no one else in the room will probably be familiar with this, but you know, Crowley talks about you know, always to avoid lust of result. Okay, I guess you're familiar with that, aren't you, Ben?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I must admit, when I'm involved in a spiritual practice, even if it's rising on the plane, you know, let's say just a middle pillar exercise, okay, so just kind of, which is very much a yogic spiritual practice. If I allow self, right, which in a sense is the core of satanic practice, you know, worship of the self. It's almost like, for me, that kind of almost seems to have negative results. Okay, so if I focus on a physical, practical outcome in my spiritual practice, it seems to negate the very purpose of the yogic practice. Does that make any sense to you, Ben?
No, that does make sense. Yeah, I get where you're coming from. Yeah, because obviously for me, with the yogic practice, it's like I said, I've said it a couple of times, for me, it's about connecting with my body so I can understand what's happening in terms of knots, or, you know, I write notes afterwards. So like, I need to work on my back. I need to work on this posture. I need to work on that pose. So the magical obviously works on the spirit side, the meditation works on there as well, the spirit side, and what I need to work with in terms of quieting my brain in terms of the meditation, just shutting up those 8 different radio stations that are going at once. But the will has to come in there. You have to have the will and the desire and the discipline to do the practices to start with. But when I can't remember the name of the Cambridge scientist who actually looked into the link between OCD and addiction. And he was actually talking about people that have addiction really struggle in terms of changing the way they react to problem solving because they're not very goal orientated. So for me, I have almost like a horned or laddered based goal system. So I have broad based goals at the bottom that narrow down to a single point further in the future. So I can have, you know, tomorrow's goal is to achieve, or today's goal is to achieve this, tomorrow's goal, X, Y, Z, and goes all the way down, so that I'm not always projecting about what needs to happen all the way down in the, you know, in sort of 6-8 months time. It's what's happening today and now, and what I can do to achieve those goals further down. So the will does come into that, because I have to will myself to do the things that I need to do today. So to-do lists for me are a fantastic part of my recovery, and also they give me a fantastic dopamine hit when I cross them off, you know, and that's really important for me, you know, because I'm a dopamine addict. So, you know, I need those dopamine hits. But there's things that I put in the book as well about sort of diet and stuff like that that can help you, you know. Like if you're having cravings for things like that, things, you know, like black coffee, you know, green apples, you know, things like that will actually help you steer you off. You know, I remember chomping on loads of mini Mars bars. I had a pack of the mini Mars bars in my backpack whenever I'd go anywhere, just to get rid of that sugar rush. You know, I was craving the sugar, not the drink. So it's things like that bring in. But it is then, for me, it's that will and self that comes in, that drives that. My will and self to not drink has to be more powerful than me to look at that compulsion to run off and go, that's the easy solution. I have to have the will to not drink and to follow that path for me.
Interesting. So it's kind of like you're using the oar to push the boat off the jetty, and that's your impetus, I guess, to achieve that sort of and then get that thing going. Is that kind of an accurate analogy?
Yeah, and then I'll use the magic to help drop in the subconscious, so I don't have to consciously think about it, and then, you know, I'll direct my sails the way, you know, and the boat will go the way it needs to go.
So manifestation, love it. So, and just to say, just quickly before we go to Jen in Liverpool in the UK, you've got a sponsor, and is your sponsor of your persuasion? Does he like the things you like, or is he straight laced, or what does he do?
He's a chaos magician. I got him into Thelema. It's all my fault. So yeah, he's a practicing magician as well, and yeah, we do group-based rituals together when I see him. So yeah. Great.
Okay, Jen, it's good to see you, Jen from Liverpool. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, David. How are you?
Good to see you, Jen.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Hi, Ben.
Hi.
God, I mean, I could spend hours talking to you about this. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. But what I'm trying to grasp from it is, for example, the God of my understanding is nobody else's God.
Yep.
Nobody in this world, universe, knows of my God, knows of the capability of no books have been written about it, no descendants has been sent as prophet. My God is unique to me, and kind of, as far as I'm concerned, it's mine. You know, no one else will ever understand it, because I don't. So what I'm trying to grasp is when you say kind of, because what happened to me was when I was drinking, I always had a God, but he was kind of more like a buddy, like a mate, a friend, kind of an inner. and and he always agreed with me, or it always agreed with me. My ideas were always the best ideas, honestly. That's why I got so drunk all the time. But when I came into sobriety, what happened to me was the God of my understanding quickly, almost immediately got promoted into something just higher than the highest of everything and the nothing. So when you said that kind of I put the alcohol down and then people ask you to pick up another deity, I'm trying to reconcile that in my head, because again, you name all these, and I'm never going to disrespect you by getting the names wrong. So you name all these fantastic. I mean, Lucifer, that's the one I can kind of grab onto because I've heard that name before.
Yeah.
But these, like the Norse gods and kind of these deities kind of thing. How? So I'm trying to get it kind of straight in my head. What are they deities or not? Or did you put the alcohol down and pick them up? Or I don't know.
For me, they're symbols, and as with any symbol, we give it power. So it's the power that we give it. When I have to admit my faults to God, I sit in front of a mirror and I look myself in the eye and I say out loud, this is what I did wrong. This is what I need to do about it. And for me, that's really powerful because it's me saying it out loud and it's me understanding and hearing myself say what I said. And then it's like, oh no, it's not in my head anymore. It's a thing. I've manifested that thing and I've got it out, you know. So I've had to go through different kind of rituals within that aspect as well, you know. So I write things down quite a lot and I'll set fire to them. It's gone. Disappeared now, you know. I'll buy helium balloon, you know, some helium and balloons, and I'll tie stuff to the helium balloons and actually physically let it go. So it's things like that. But yeah, the deities and the things I talked about are mythology. You know, they're all stories that link into us personally and what we have connections with and go, oh, I like that story. That sounds like a bit of me. I'd like to be a bit more like that. So we can look at those things and have a backstory for something that we're connecting with because it relates to us. It taps into something within us. So you're giving it that symbol. You're giving it that power, and it's coming from you. So Lucifer is actually just the bringer of light.
So it's the ritual, not the power behind the ritual, or is it the ritual that gives the power the ritual? Or
you give it the power. In terms of you're looking at sacred spaces, a space is only sacred because you give it the power. You know, you're giving it that energy. It's the vibrations that are coming from you and how you're interacting and reacting to those things and places around you.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much, Jen. It's so good to see you, Jen. I've known Jen for quite a while in the COVID adventure, so it's good to see you at last. Good to put a face to the name. And yeah, Ben, that's great. So we've got quite a few hands up. So just remember, we're sort of into the final stretch here today. So if you can keep your questions quite brief, and we'll give Ben a chance to answer them. So Carrie Jo, how are you? Do you want to come in? You got a question for Ben?
Cool, thank you. Thanks for hosting this meeting this event. It's really cool.
We're here every week.
I forgot about it, so I joined late. My question is, do you have like an author or a book that you would recommend? I don't know anything about Chaos Magick or satanic rituals or anything. Like, do you have a beginner's intro that you would recommend? Thanks.
Unfortunately, like with most magic and with most practices, there isn't a one book. For me, it's about reading multiple books, which is unfortunate. Obviously, the Satanic Bible is a good jumping off place. The cause literature, Rational Satanism is another good place to sort of jump off from. In terms of Chaos Magick, Phil Hines' Condensed Chaos is a fantastic book. I think it's Phil Hine. Otherwise, it's Peter Carroll. No, Peter Carroll wrote Psychonaut. So yeah, there's names about there, and there's bits to go through. For me, start with one book. If you like it, run with it. And just go from there. It's about following your passion. If you follow what you enjoy, it's not study. So just go where the flow takes you.
Thank you very much. Cheers, Carrie Ann. It's good to see you. Just a quick commercial break before we go to the final two questions is we are here every week at the same time, every Friday, where we do an investigation and we look into various people's concepts of higher power. And next week we do have a special guest. It's none other than a guy called Rupert Spira will be here on this, and he'll be talking about spirituality. He'll be talking about non-duality and his take. He's not an alcoholic, as far as I know, but he will be talking. It'll be a real great opportunity for him to look at recovery. So I would certainly get in early next week. We're going to big in the room for it. So please make sure you come along. Campion R, do you want to come in and ask a question of Ben?
Thanks so much. This will be quick. One of the questions was, do you do this every week? I heard you say you do. I'm delighted to hear it. This is my first time here. I saw the thing on Facebook about Satanism, and I said, never will I do that. And then there was another thing on Facebook about magic and mysticism, and I said, well, I've been on a hermetic path my whole recovery, and then I come in here and hear Ben, who's just marvelous. I've enjoyed every moment of his sharing and his path. So my quick question for Ben is, I clicked on the link to Amazon to buy the book, and it's only paper, and I'm living in New Zealand, and the postage will be outrageous. Any plans to put it as an ebook or a Kindle?
Lots of people have asked me this. There will be at some point. I'm trying to expand on it and make a second book because there's things I missed out on, and I want to go deeper into the magical side of stuff. So it will come, but I don't know how long that will be.
Thank you very much.
Hang around, Campion, and maybe we can have a chat. Maybe we can sort something out for you, mate. So thank you very much for that question. As I say, see you next Friday. Now, Bob and Laura, Bob L and Laura L.
Hey, I'm Bob, and we're from Chicago.
Hey.
You know, my wife sent the flyer on the meeting here, and I was really stoked about this. You know, and I too knew that, you know, it was going to draw as much negative reviews and comments as it would positive. And, you know, it's interesting to me. And Ben, you know, it's a real good deal. You know, I mean, your recipe is your recipe, right? And I might not like cayenne pepper, but I like the chili powder, you know, so I'll use that, you know, kind of deal. You know, so it's just, you know, it's very refreshing to me that this is what I've read in the book. You know, an open mind, the willingness to do it, and then take action. Mm-hmm. And you know, I'm a rabbit hunter by trade. I love poking in rabbit holes. You know, and I don't know where they're going to lead me. So to hear these things is encouraging to me, because there's, you know, the book says that we travel innumerable paths, and this is just one of them. And mine is could be similar to yours, a little bit different than yours, but it's my path. I find it interesting that when people in some of the meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous that I go to, when they start talking about how nature is their higher power, nobody scoffs at that. It's okay. But, you know, you put the S word in there and, oh my God, because there's a misunderstanding with it. So again, really stoked. I'm going to look into some of the other offerings you have here. And it's funny, here in Chicago, there's Tom, and here's Tom with the weather. There's the weather guy that's been here for decades is Tom Skilling. And and here's Tom with the weather, you know, it's all the same, but it's a little bit different. So glad to be here, and thanks for, you know, all your knowledge and wisdom here. That's it.
Man, thank you.
Cheers, Bob. Just on that, here's Tom with the weather is named after the comedian, the late comedian Bill Hicks, and he had a great skit positive spiritual stories, and it's a great skit. If you get Bill Hicks is great, and that's where we got the name from. It's a funny one. So I've got a couple more questions, and I think somebody actually stole my thunder. I think Carrie Joe stole my thunder, but I was going to ask you the normal question I ask is you're on a boat in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, you've won the lottery, and you're sailing along nicely, and you hit a load of rocks and the boat's about to sink. You've got no time at all to jump off the boat. You've got a plastic bag and you've got the chance to get one book.
Yeah.
What book will that be when you swim to that desert island that's about 500 meters away? What's the book you're going to rescue, mate?
This is one actually here. It's called Sophie's World. It's by a Norwegian writer called Jostein Gaarder. And it's actually about a dad who teaches his daughter about philosophy and about loads of different philosophers. I've started it. I've got a little bit of the way through. It's an awesome book. My wife's read it twice and she recommended that I read it. So as I haven't read all of it, I'm going to take it so I can finish it. But for me, the idea of having loads of different philosophical viewpoints will actually allow me to think, especially being on an island by myself for a long time. It will give me ages to think and philosophize.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. And I think just on that, I just was going to ask, it occurred to me is, again, when we talk about all these little, the iconography and all the little emojis and the symbolism that you talk, but for you, is there an overarching God? I know you say it's yourself, but is this projection, is this dream, is there one? Is there a single God?
No, I go into the whole Baphomet for me is the sort of the archetypal figure for me. It's about balance. It's about having the positive, the negative, the as above, so below. It brings in that the third Sephiroth on the Tree of Life. It brings in Babylon. It brings in Saturn. It brings in Yod-He, Vah-He, man, or father, mother, son, daughter, and it encompasses everything. And for me, it's about having that complete balance within life, so that I can be the most whole and best person I can be. I mean, for me, my sort of life motto is I try and be a better me tomorrow than I was yesterday while living in today.
Fantastic. That's wonderful. Finally, one more question. I know we spoke about this during the week. Sorry to push it. Was Bill W. a mystic?
Yeah. If you look into the whole sort of the logo of AA, it was actually, that's the book logo that's on my book on the back here, which obviously you can see on Zoom. You won't see on the podcast, but it's actually the triangle in the circle with a square and a circle inside. That is actually the Philosopher's Stone, and the esoteric view of the Philosopher's Stone is about self-knowledge, and it's about finding yourself. So for me, the whole point of AA then and my recovery is finding out who I am and driving that forward to the best that it can be, to become that Ubermensch that I spoke about at the beginning.
Thank you very much. Well, look, I think we've just about run out of time there. So I want to thank you very much, Ben Dean. And as I say, we put all the details for his meetings. I thoroughly recommend have an open mind and go along to the meeting. It is an AA meeting. Surprise, surprise, it is an AA meeting. And it's a wonderful meeting. And I know there's stuff that happens in Pacific time zone. I think it's Eastern time zone, also in UK time zone. So go along and give it a go. Why not? And you never know what might happen. It was good stuff. So Ben, I want to thank you very, very much for coming along.
No, thank you for having me. It's been fantastic.
And that's another one of Here's Tom with the Weather. We're going to be back next Friday, as I said, with none other than Rupert Spira. So until then, thank you very much.